don't forget, we are in this world, but not of this world. The Jamer Coutume that we're going to do, that community prayer, puts us with God. And with God, with us. After Jamer Coutume, we're going to go into the world to become his presence in the world. That's what the Jamer Coutume has to do, is to create in us the awareness that we are God's presence in this world. Let's start with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Jesus, wisdom of the Father, give us the wisdom to always think, speak, and do what is good in your eyes. Save us from evil thoughts, words, and deeds. Have mercy on all your creatures and on us sinners. Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, now and always, and forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
Well, this is going to be a few days of close look, intensive look at our heritage in liturgical books. It's an important subject for a few reasons. Number one, the liturgical books give us a glimpse, a very close glimpse of the history of the development of community prayer. The exact Greek word, liturgia, public worship, public prayer, community prayer. How it started, how it developed, how we got where we are, what needs to be done now, what the situation is now, and what is the historical lesson that we need to learn in our present circumstances in adjusting these books to our present circumstances, because these liturgical books were created not overnight, but over centuries, always adapting and adjusting to local circumstances, local societal circumstances, which is always changing. It has never been stagnant, and the church has been flexible enough to always adjust. That's where we're at right now, and we will look at that more closely. It also gives us a very intimate look at our forebears, our forefathers and foremothers, who had a very active and devoted life of prayer. These prayers come to us, and it opens a window into the souls of those who wrote it, be it our church fathers, be it our monastics, men and women monastics, I must emphasize. And also, they give us a very clear picture of how our forebears came together, prayed, got their strength, and passed it on. There is a generational tradition of passing from one to the other. And in some instances, we can see the movement from one generation to another. And now that's important for us, because now that we have received it, how have we received it? And how are we going to pass it on to the next generation? That is very important. But essentially, I brought here some of the books that I have. There are more books. We're going to come. I will refer to them. But essentially, our liturgical tradition is collected in 3 books, basically 3 books. First one is Jamakirk, which comes in 3 editions. This edition is called Jamakirk Adeni. The chancel edition. So you have this on every church main altar, the bema, and it contains at the beginning the entire book of Psalms. And we will cover that as to how it is used, or it was. And then the daily hours and a few other prayers. And it concludes with the Divine Liturgy, the text of the Divine Liturgy. And then the second volume has the Donatsuz. The calendar, how it is calculated and so on. That's another subject, but right now, just know that it is here, but it really is not part of Jamakirk per se. I'm going to explain that in a minute. So Jamakirk comes in this edition, Adeni Jamakirk, Tserat Jamakirk, this one, and this one now has been printed and reprinted a few times. This particular edition, the last edition, was in 1955, and it has been reproduced by modern methods without being reset or retyped or in any shape or form. You know how modern technology is. You just open it, take a picture, and print it. That's it. It's easy. The problem there is that whatever mistakes are here will be repeated. Whatever changes needed to be done, can't do it. Some things, just to give you an example, in this book, we still pray for pious kings. I don't know too many. First of all, we do not have a kingdom anymore. Armenians don't have it. And whatever other kingdoms there are, I don't know too many who are pious. So that needs to change. The idea is really a very biblical, and from the perspective of Christian prayer life, to pray for our political leaders. St. Paul actually says so. Pray for your leaders. Now, historically, Jamakirk should say for pious presidents, for faithful presidents, or government leaders, whatever. But our prayer has to reflect our current reality. In the Jamakik, there are quite a few examples like that. So my point is that with this being printed and reprinted exactly the way it is, those particular corrections are not done and cannot be done. The Jamakir also comes in a pocket edition. Now, believe it or not, this contains this except the Psalms. Okay, very small and yet very handy, small letters, but this has something else also. You probably will have a chance to look at that itself. At the beginning here, it says, Garg Jamasatutyan. See, right now, who does what is not clear. Sometimes in our church services, you will just wait and see. Everybody starts now pointing to the other. You do this, you do that, and so on. Well, here, I think it was Tolma Ardzruni. In any event, who does what when? Now, how many people do you see on the altar on any given Sunday? Let's, for an example, look at the cathedral. 5, 6, depending, sometimes 8 people. According to this, all you need is 4. Mm-hmm. Okay? All you need is 4. Avak sargavak, hedevak sargavak, yelk sargavak, mutk sargavak. Oh. There is a cycle of 4. The yelk sargavak tomorrow will be out of the rotation. Somebody else is going to take his place. The mutk sargavak is going to come in. Hedevak, avak. In Jerusalem, I don't know what it is now, but in our days, we used to keep that very faithfully. Nobody guessed who was going to do. If I couldn't do it, I would ask somebody else to take my place, but normally that cycle remained. The reason that is important is not only for Badarak, but for Jamir Kutun as well. Who says what? Now, there is a certain order in all our services. Our church tones, and every day has its tone. 8 tones. Aitsa, Epgen, Pensa, Pengen, Kimsa, Kimgen. What is today's tone? Achagom, Tsahagom. This year, I don't have the Oratswitz.
Tsabes or Tsahagomyan.
Tsahagomyan. Tsayere Tsahagomyan. Aipsa. Okay. Aipsa is Tsahagom. That is the left of the altar. And Aipgen, the Gen, Gom, is on the right side. Accordingly, this one says, who is going to start? Achagom gam Tsahagom. Avak yeritzutas, hedevat yeritzutas. It's very important because it makes things easy and clear. Doesn't leave anything to guess. Okay? So very important to remember that. Now, Badarak, the same thing. A lot of times it is Sunday morning. You do this, you do that. They agree with one another, sometimes dispute. No, I want to do this. No, you want to do. Very unclear. Very clear here. Very clear. Okay? Now, Jamakirk. Now, Jamakirk, Kurbani Jamakirk, I just brought this as a sample. You know, our Western Armenian ancestors, many of them were Turkish speaking. My grandmother was one. She lived after the genocide. She came to Beirut. She was surrounded by grandchildren who spoke Armenian. Neighbors, everybody spoke Armenian, but her generation, especially from Cilicia, they spoke Turkish. And my grandmother couldn't even read. But whatever she prayed, whenever she prayed in Turkish. As a matter of fact, she had a Bible, complete Bible, in Turkish with Armenian alphabet. And I used to read the Bible to her. I still have that Bible. That's how I learned Turkish. My brother, sister, my other cousins didn't do that, and they don't speak Turkish. I do. Now, why is that important? Language right now, in our present circumstances, is a serious issue. Should we do English? Should women? I'm not going to get into that dispute. I just wanted you to know the language issue is not a new issue for our generation. It was an issue in the past, and they solved it. This Jamakirk was published by the Catholicosate of Cilicia in 1935, and this is the fourth edition. The fourth edition. And here is the amazing thing. Some of Nerse Shnorali's rhymed songs. Aravod Luso. We sing Aravod Luso every Sunday. It is with the same measures rhymed in Turkish. And they used to sing it in Turkish. There was a group of ladies that got together in church once, twice a week, and they prayed. It was not an issue. Language was not an issue. I'm not going to get into that because that's not our purpose. The only reason I am saying it is that from one generation to another, one thing that was not an issue, now it's an issue. We should actually look at a couple of generations before us, our grandparents' generation, learn from them. Why wasn't it an issue then for them? Why is it an issue for us now? Very important. However, if you want to look at these books, I'm going to leave them here for a while. But you can look at this. It's a wonderful way, and it's not the only one. As I said, there are many others published everywhere. This is the one in Beirut.
I was going to ask if you could sing. I was going to ask if you could sing us one.
Oh, let me see.
In Turkish.
Arabud Luso, right? Now, Arabud Luso goes in a krapar. Arabud Luso are kagnartar aris luis tsakya pechum ihore pechya ihokuis pankezi hajuis ya nuri seher ya adil güneş bize nur doğdur Rab'dan kaynayan, kaynat canımdan, sana hoş kelam.
Very interesting.
I mean, not all of them, but it is available. By the way, for your information, Nese Shnorhali's rhymed songs, including Arabudus Ashkaramenain, are translated into modern Armenian, rhymed by Yerishe Turian in his Sirpazan Kanar book. It's at the end. Luisi Arabod by Zararekar, Luis Zake Imod, Zund Hayreni, Peche Hoties, Hosker Hajeli. And he has Aisoranjar, Noraster Zial, Astvazanir, all of that. Wonderful, wonderful translation. So it's available, and part of the purpose that I want to accomplish is to make these hidden treasures open to everybody. Okay, Sirpas Ankara should be somewhere in this library, so we can do that. So that's Jamakirk. The second book that we have is very important. It's the Jashotskirk lectionary. Now this contains the daily readings for each and every day of the liturgical year. But a correction. Unlike what a lot of people think, this is not the whole Bible. A lot of people think if I read every day's reading, at the end of the day, I will have read, at the end of the year, I would have read the Bible. No. This doesn't include all the Bible. It's selections from the Bible for a particular day, for a particular feast, for a particular saint's day, for a particular fasting day, depending on the season. Some readings are repeated 2 or 3 times. But this one is one of the oldest Christian books put together. We'll look at it more closely when we look at this book. But this particular book had already received a final form in the 4th century, which was the model from which the Armenian lectionary was copied. And until today, it reflects the 4th century origins. That in itself poses a few problems for us, or a few difficulties, and we will look at that when we look at it more closely. But the lectionary usually is very consistent. It starts with a psalm verse, okay? I'll look at that separately, not at this moment. However, that psalm verse is very, very important. It's called Gtzort. Okay? Gtzort. That means the English now.
Response? Response?
No. It will come to me. It will come to me. Let me see. It starts with a psalm. The sort is like attachment or repeat. I don't know. I will look at that more closely when we get there, but it starts with a psalm verse. It has almost always, only very few occasions, it doesn't have an Old Testament passage. Usually it has. As a matter of fact, our donut suites shows sometimes. It does say, for example, Markaren, the reading from the prophets. Usually, in most cases, the majority of the prophets is from Isaiah. There is from Jeremiah, there is from others, but Isaiah is the dominant prophet that we read from. It does have a synaxis Alleluia, this first opening psalm, and then the synaxis Alleluia, which is for the gospel. The word that I was looking for is refrain. Refrain.
So the Kutsort is like the Alleluia for the gospel, but for the Old Testament?
No. The Getzort is, in many cases, when there is the whole psalm, one person reads the psalm, and then the congregation reads the refrain.
Oh.
Have you been to a Catholic church where before the gospel? That's exactly how we used to do it.
Oh.
Don't forget, now Catholic, Orthodox, when it comes to the lectionary, we started from the same tradition. Then it developed. So Getzort is attached. So the reader reads one verse, everybody repeats that psalm verse.
Oh.
The same way we have now, we have two of those remaining, but they're little changed in usage. During Lent, it's not one verse, it's the whole psalm. Alleluia, Alleluia, the whole psalm.
Yeah.
Not one verse, the whole psalm. Or after Easter. Kovia Jerusalem is there, the whole psalm.
And then the congregation sings it back?
That Getzort verse is supposed to be read actually by the reader, let's say in this case, could be the deacon or any lector, terzo, and then the congregation repeats that verse.
Oh.
But now the choir does it.
Huh.
Okay? Now, we have stopped that practice. I wish we could revive it because it would really bring back not only an old tradition, but it would engage the congregation in the service in a meaningful way. So that's one aspect. The other, and then comes the gospel reading. For the gospel reading, you still have one verse of singing, the synaxis Alleluia, the synaxis psalm and the synaxis Alleluia. Okay? So the synaxis Alleluia leads to the gospel reading. So now, this one here is a reprint of the last edition of Jerusalem. 1860, I think. In the 19th century, they reprinted it in the 1960s. It is now again out of print. However, it's there's an Aivazian edition also that has been reprinted, and it's available now. But as you know, I did this a couple of years ago, but this includes only the Sunday and feast day readings. However, at the end, I have a list of every day of the year. Okay, so you have almost every service at the end and a few other articles there that I thought would be useful. The sad part of this lectionary thing right now is that in many churches, they have almost stopped using it for many reasons. One, this is at the beginning of the Divine Liturgy. And at the beginning of the Divine Liturgy, for the first 45 minutes, nobody is there. So, why read it? We'll come to that later. There is a couple of editions that has come as of late for lectionary. First of all, it makes no sense to me now to read the lections in Karapar. Who for? Sometimes the reader even doesn't know Karapar, the language that they're reading in. So they have made it in Ashkarapar. Mine is in English. And here, the late Arshen Aivazian, a wonderful friend, published this, but it lacks the Psalms. Doesn't have the Psalms. Why not? I don't know. He left it out. A few others, Arshen Aivazian in the Western Diocese printed a book with the readings. He left out the Old Testament entirely. No Old Testament reading. Yes.
I noticed the discrepancy once we were at a parish, and I believe it was that same Western Diocese publication that we were using. And one of the parish people that were going to read the Untertums, they asked me to help them find it. And I knew it was like fourth or whatever, Giraki after Subh Chach, Yud Chach. And in the red lectionary, the English one, it was like fifth Sunday. And in the Ashkarabar Western Diocese one, it was like fourth Sunday.
Yeah. There is, when it comes to the Donatshuits, which was in the Jamakir at the end, which is also available in a separate volume, our liturgical calendar has a lot of inconsistencies. Someplace it says, Arachin Giragi Azgani Zanantian. Another place it says, Yegrot Giragi Harutian. Easter becomes first Sunday of resurrection. The next Sunday it becomes second. Then it comes to, let's say, Lent. Pumparegentan, which is not Lent. Lent starts the day after Pumparegentan. But the first Sunday of Lent calls it second Sunday of Lent. And Pumparegentan calls the first Sunday. So there is some inconsistency in this. We'll look at the Donatshuits separately. We will cover, those consistencies. But it's very good that you noticed that. Yeah, there is inconsistencies there. But my point was that, look, some of the readings are indeed very long now. They need to be edited. However, who is going to do the editing? what principles are going to be applied to do the editing. And third, there has to be consistency. Everybody has to do the same editing. We don't have it now. We don't. So the Western Diocese publication, he edited almost everything, left out the Psalms, left out the Old Testament, which in my opinion is dangerous because it sort of diminishes the importance of the Old Testament. Our fathers would be offended because without the Old Testament, there would be no New Testament. And without the New Testament, we will not be able to understand the Old Testament.
I noticed during all this Artsakh stuff, the recent loss of Stepanakert, for the Sunday lectionaries, some of the Old Testament readings were about the loss of Jerusalem and the siege of Jerusalem. That's almost like perfect homematutune with what happened that we went through. So, and the Bible readings from the New Testament were regular, some scene involving Jesus. And I was thinking, the Old Testament reading is somehow way more applicable to what people are going through and what they're feeling right now. But I didn't hear it read at church wherever we went.
Yeah, your observation is very, very timely. Yes, and that's the point. We should not, under any circumstances, diminish the importance of the Old Testament or ignore it. Now, in my introduction for my edition of the lectionary, I have said, whoever the reader is, consult with the priest. I don't know how every other priest does, but I usually, when I was in active parish, I would read the reading, and wherever I found a passage that I would use in my homily or would be useful for my homily, and I would bring it, I would leave it to that and leave the rest of it out, but definitely include the Old Testament. That's my point. So that, however, is very, very important. So Ashharapar, there is a need to do the entire Jashu in Ashharapar. I have no question of the need, but it would be a huge project, and it would also require a costly funding. So I don't know how, when, but these are things that we have to pray for in order to reclaim our traditions that we are on the verge of losing or recreating. Now, as far as the lectionary is concerned, daily readings, there are a couple of others very, very important. First of all, on the main altar of every church, you have to find one Jashu Avedaran. This one is the synaxis gospel reading for every day of the year. Every feast day, every fasting day, every saint's day, it's included in here. So you just read the book. This is the one that the deacon holds and reads from. This is in Krapar. It's not available in Ashharapar. There are then, of blessed memory, put that together. Okay, so you have that. You also have Avedaran Adeni. Not every church now displays these books the way they should be. For example, on the bima, in the center, you have the Adeni Jamakirk, and on the side, the left of the altar, Tsahagomiantas, there is another stand with Jamakirk Adeni. Why Jamakirk Adeni? Jamakirk Adeni contains the four Gospels. Okay? This one has daily readings for the Badarak. Okay? Joshua Translation. This one, the four Gospels, as they are. But at the end, it has the first lines of every reading. But before that, it contains the Hankestian Avedaran. Every morning we have Hankestian Jamerkutium. Depending on the tone of the day, I'm going to explain also how the tones of the day works. But here we have the tone of the day reading. Always, always, Matthew is Pengen Tagen. When the tone of the day is Pengen or Tagen, the gospel reading, Hankestian, is Matthew. Mark is Pensa Tatsa. Luke is Aiken Kimgen. And Hovannes is Aitza Kimsa. Always. So it has Hankestian readings. It has Sunday Dajari readings. Instead of Hankestian, on Sundays, you read Dajari Avedaran. That is Jesus at the temple. Every Sunday. Instead of Hankestian Avedaran, you read, I will come. Why not Hankestian and Dajari? I will explain that later. Then you have Yugaperitz Avedaran. For the Yugaperitz Jamerkutium, you have all of those with the same designations of tone that I said. And then, at the end of every Sunday, before Noras Terzial, there is the last gospel for Sunday, Jamerkutium, where you read a healing gospel, Pujishkutian Avedaran. Okay? Here are all the choices. Again, with the same designations, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So,
it's like a Joshua Avedaran plus.
yes, it is. But Joshua Avedaran, you have to know the gospel, which gospel, chapter, verse, you will find it here. This one already has it. Okay?
Yeah.
But you can find the same thing here.
Yes.
But this one has what this one doesn't. All the designations that I just told you about. So now you have another book, the third book. So we have looked at two books so far, Jamakirk and Joshua Kirk. The third liturgical book is Mashtots, or it is also called Jisaran. This one, later, when the smaller Mashtots came into being, derived from this, this is Mair Mashtots. This contains everything. But the last one printed is in 1807. And this is the original. Okay, 1807. It has so much to offer, so much to offer. And it is important for us to realize that, because right now, in many, many situations, in many, many dioceses, in different countries, the liturgical status and the demands and the situations change. In this particular one, for example, blessing of a well. Well, we were a farming society. People had wells. So our forefathers thought it would be a good idea, because water is a blessing from God. Water is going to be used to provide us with food. It's another blessing, it's another byproduct of God's blessings, and so on. So therefore, they had a blessing of well, a blessing of seeds. Makes sense. Blessings of farm equipment. Gal. Galioshnutyun. Now, the one thing they don't have there, I'm going to give as an example, the blessing of a car. Because car did not exist at the time. But do you think our forefathers, who really put together a prayer for the blessing of farm equipment, would not put together a blessing of a car? Now, mind you, a lot of people say, I've discussed this with some, you mean you're going to take the cross and go and bless the car outside? No. Oh. I would ask the person, bring me a cross. I will have a special prayer. This car will be in the car, protect the passengers, protect the driver, protect this car from all accidents, and what? Well, you hang the cross in the car. That becomes a blessing of the car. Now, there is something else that, yes.
We already have like a prayer for a cross.
Yes, we do.
It can be applied to that.
Except the prayer has to be adjusted a little bit.
But can I just improvise?
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
So we can already do that. It's just not standardized.
Not necessarily. No, that's another thing that we have lost, is spontaneous prayer. It has to come from the liturgical books, otherwise God doesn't hear us. There is that mentality. Okay? But I agree with you, 100%. Spontaneous prayer for the occasion. There are a few other things now. Now, I must also say this. There are some things that may vary from society to society. Now, here in the United States, pets are a big part of our life. Catholics, Protestants, they have a service annual on St. Francis Day to bless pets, house pets. I mentioned this to one of our parishioners. I mean, that was, how could that be? Because that person was from the Middle East, where dogs are considered dirty animals. If you want to insult someone, call him a dog.
Yeah.
Okay? Okay. But for American-born generations, you know how many American-born that has, we just got a pet at our home, and my son is wondering, can we bring him for blessing? Yeah, but wait until everybody leaves the church. The point that I'm trying to make here is, look, there are new circumstances. we cannot ignore. We have to face them. We have to create the opportunities to address them based on our traditions, right here. I don't have to reinvent the tradition. I just have to adapt it to my present circumstances. That's the important point. Okay? So that's part. Now, my Mashdots has a lot. It also, now my Mashdots has ordinations from clerics all the way to bishop and Catholicos and so on. Each one of these now have their own history, the anointing of the Catholicos and all, and the anointing of the kings. There are a lot of historical issues there, but that's not what we're going to deal with. From there comes these mashtos. These are handy mashtos, seratz mashtos. It contains everything that a person needs: baptism, wedding, funeral, and related, including church vestments, liturgical books for use in church, chalice, incense. These are all part of our tradition. Incense was not used, despite the fact that each time the deacon is going to cense, he takes it to the priest, holds, and the priest blesses the incense and puts it in the purvar. Despite that, there is a blessing. People used to bring incense to church as a gift. So you bless the incense with the donor holding it. That has something, it has little to do at that point with the item of incense. It has to do with the action of the donation. Okay? You have to adjust the thinking there in order to understand why the incense that is blessed each time it is used is going to be blessed when it's brought to the church. Okay? All that has to be considered. But it also has quite a few other services, including things that are now completely out of use. When I was in Jerusalem, first of all, funeral used to be quite a few ceremony. We used to go to the deceased house, bring the body to the church, within 24 hours has to be. Church service, at home service, at church service, then proceed to the cemetery with the cemetery service. The next morning, actually 3 mornings, Aikuts. Aikuts. Aik means sunrise or sunbreak. We used to go and bless the grave. 3 days. Then on the 7th day. Then on the 40th day. Then on the year anniversary. All of those now, in our present circumstances, are impractical. Impractical. Circumstances have changed. Adjustments have to be made. The funeral service has to be adjusted. We will look at those more closely. The point is that these books now, this one is the 1824 edition in Istanbul, in Constantinople, 1824. This one is 1905 in Vagar Shabbat, Aivazian. And this one is 1961 Jerusalem. Now, this is the 6th edition, 1961. Maybe it's time here to mention one thing. The primary source of our liturgical books was Jerusalem. The primary definer of liturgical practices was Jerusalem. I'm not talking about just for Armenians. For the Christian church, Jerusalem was the source because Jerusalem was where the Christian community, which later was separated into Armenian, Catholic, and Greek as we know now. But the Jerusalem church was the source of liturgical practices because Jerusalem was where the holy places are. And there, the liturgical celebration was formed, and everybody adopted it. All the others adopted it. So Jerusalem was that source. And, very important, the Armenian Patriarchate of Jerusalem had the first printing press in Jerusalem of anybody. The first commercial printing press was established by the Armenian Patriarchate in 1841. That was the first commercial press. And it did multilingual publications, multilingual. And it became the source of liturgical books. Then, of course, came Shabbat, then, of course, came Constantinople, then now Cilician Catholic Crusade, and so on. But regardless, the other thing from all these books now, we will look at it more closely. Many of these books and these services, be it baptism, be it wedding, funeral, do not reflect any accommodation in our present life circumstances, which is different everywhere. In America, in the Middle East, in Armenia, in Europe, different. We have to be conscious of the fact that there are new editions that are coming up, and unfortunately, they are not all the same. Emashtos in Europe, Emashtos in the Middle East, Emashtos in Constantinople, in Istanbul, and Emashtos in the Eastern Diocese or the Western Diocese would look different. That's dangerous. We will cover that more closely as we proceed later. Okay? Where are we time-wise?
11:20.
If you would like to do a small break, we can do that. If you would rather keep going, we can do that too.
Whatever. I'm just going to follow whatever the practices are.
Gentlemen?
Push through. Oh, break. Okay.
It's 11:20 now? Okay, let's continue. We have until noon, right?
Yes. And if you go over, no one is going to say anything,
You want to take a few minutes break?
especially in light of the circumstance this morning.
You want to take a few minutes break and then we come back?
Let's take a break there.
Okay, let's take a break. So let's take a look at Jamakir. The Jamakir is our daily cycle of liturgies. It comes, the word itself, Jamakir, from the Greek horologion, book of hours. And actually, if you look, we call it Kisherayin Jamerkutyon, Kisher Jam, hour. Aravodian Jam, morning hour. Jashu Jam, okay? Yerevoyan Jam, Hagan Jam, Hankistian Jam. Jam and Yerkel, Jamerkutyon. That's how the word is made. And that's the daily cycle. On the title page, it says, Jamakir Hayastanyay Sub Yegeretsvo, Ararial Sirpots Tartmanchatzen Merots, the translators, Sahaga Yev Mesroba, Yev Yeraneli Hayravidatsen Merots, Tudo Yev Hohamnu Mantagungo, Yev Sirpun Nersisi Shnor Halvo. What it doesn't say is that the Jamakir originally was brought to Armenia by St. Gregory from Caesarea, where it had developed quite a bit. The Book of Hours, Horologion, the Greek Book of Hours. Now, in our present circumstances, the day starts, according to this, with the renunciation of Satan. Now, we are not going to go into the hours and, discuss or what time, what hour, but night hour is before sunrise, be it 4 o'clock in the morning, midnight, 3 o'clock in the morning, doesn't matter. Our Jamakir in many ways reflects not parish cycle of liturgies, but monastic cycle of liturgies. That's another subject in and of itself, but for the purpose of our discussion here, it is important to note that we lost our monastic life after the genocide. One of the greatest losses of the genocide was the loss of our monastic life. We don't have a monastic life. Why I say this? It's because monastic life is the backbone, of liturgical life, is the backbone of spiritual life. We are right now the only Eastern Orthodox Church that doesn't have a monastic life. Mm-hmm. There are some signs that it is coming back, but it is not a massive conscious revitalization of monastic life. In Armenia, there are a couple of, I met a few of them, very dedicated, very nice, and they are actually looking into history and trying to rediscover what it was and recreate it for now. They're doing that, and I'm very, very happy about that. However, look at it this way. We're going to celebrate the 125th anniversary of our diocese this year. In 125 years, we do not have one monastery in the United States. Greeks had a few. Russians have quite a few. Assyrians have it. Copts have 10, 12 monasteries with monks, real monks. Why not? You see, monks are very important. Number one, they are the ones who pray for the church 24/7. We need that. We need that. In fact, we need that desperately. That's number one. Second, monks historically were and should be brave enough and courageous enough to stand up to what's wrong in the church, in the structure of the church, not the divine structure, not the divine institution, but the human institution. I have respect for all bishops, all Catholic clergy. I have no problem, but we should admit they're human beings. And they will be attracted at some point and fall into temptations that would be detrimental to the life of the spiritual structure of the church, the divine institution. I can't speak because I'm under that bishop. I can't say because I would be afraid. I shouldn't be, but I'm a human being. I am afraid. I have a family. I would lose my source of income. Monks didn't care. You know, St. John Chrysostom, there was a emperor who was going every which way. He didn't like it. He told him. The emperor exiled him. He went to exile gladly. But his popularity forced the emperor to bring him back. So the next time the emperor entered, Chrysostom turned around and says, you go out, repent, and then come back. I'd like to know what bishop would do that now. What I'm saying is, monks are the conscience of the church. Right now, I am afraid that is silenced. Our conscience of monastic voice is silenced, and that's dangerous for us. I'm seeing some interest even now here, but I must point out, we call Jerusalem monastery.
Mm-hmm.
We call the group of priests in Jerusalem Miapanutiun, brotherhood. Antilias, Aivazian. It's not monastic life. It doesn't exist, either in Jerusalem or in Antilias or in Aivazian. Monastic life is different. Monastic discipline is different. So we need to consider that. What I'm saying is that this Jamaki is the product of prayerful monasticism in many respects, and we should strive to revive it that way. This cannot be revived in parishes. This book, for all intents and purposes, doesn't exist in parish life. And whatever some parishes do is very small, very imperfect, very incomplete, and very much alone. The priest and the deacon. That's it. There's nobody else. That's not the community service that this was intended for. Something else that I must say. They used to do it in Antioch. When I was in Jerusalem, we used to actually criticize them for it. 1 week Kisherayin Jamerkutun, 1 week Aragodian Jamerkutun. Really? Is this a classroom or a church? There's the point. This chapel is not a classroom. This is your community prayer chapel. When you enter there, no matter which one of these, which page you open, you are praying together. That's where the strength is. And the same now, Jerusalem changed now. I am really heartbroken when I went to Jerusalem. 1 week Kisherayin, 1 week Aragodian. It's a game. When we were there, when I was growing up in Jerusalem, we used to wake up at 4:30 in the morning. 4:30 in the morning. And guess what? My body got used to it until today. I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I go to bed at 12 o'clock. I wake up at 4. I can sleep beyond 4, 4:30, sometimes 5 o'clock maybe. The point is, we used to go to chapel, all of us together, from 5 o'clock, 4:30, 5 o'clock, till 7 o'clock. Kisherayin, Aragodian, the whole thing. And then come have breakfast, go to class. In the afternoon, classes ended, we went for vespers. And the season changed. Every Saturday in the morning, Badara. There was no classes on Saturday. Badara. Every Saturday in one of the chapels in Jerusalem. Kalkhatir, or Arakilot Chapel, or Eshmeazin Chapel, Reshtagabet, wherever it was. Every Saturday, Badara. These are, this book, Jamakirk, reflects the prayer life of the church, not the prayer history. Distinction. This reflects the prayer life of the church. And it is now dormant because of our misunderstanding, misapplication, and misinformation. We have to revive that. There is, and this is where I'm going to begin. It starts with the renunciation of the world. Some practices that we have completely forgotten. Do you say Rajarin here? In the chapel? No. Any chapel, have you experienced Rajarin?
Yes.
Okay. You turn to west, right? And what do? Just stand there and say, no, no. No, this is when you're asking for something and you're waiting to drop. Rajarin. This is the position of the hands. Rajarin ki sadana yeva maya chaperitana.
Like that?
Yeah.
Not that?
No. This is what we used to do. Okay?
Why is like that? We're not
S. Reverse. You're going against the enemy.
You're not receiving anything from them.
You're like
Closed
a
off.
donkey.
Okay. All right. Footnote, hand positions. Very important in prayer. When you're asking for something, when you're rejecting something, when you're making a creedal statement, what do? That's the Western way. the Eastern way, unity in one faith. This is it.
Is this
Now-
what you would do in Jerusalem during the creeds?
Yeah,
Wow.
well, we used to.
Yeah.
I don't know what they do now, but this is what we used to. Tiran Serpazan, who really was a guardian of these things, never did this. Now, mind you, this is much, much better than any other position during Havadan. But all creedal statements has to be with a symbol of unity. Okay? Some people go this way too, but I prefer this. Tiran Serpazan used to do this, and I prefer this. Havadan Kineastas. Unity, oneness, and then, however, when you're asking for something in this, but body position, very important. During Badarak, now I see some people kneel when Veraperum is done. Read any book, look into any book. There is no reason to kneel during Veraperum. To bow, yes. Not to kneel. Not to kneel. Stand up. When the gospel is read, when the priest blesses, but during litanies, sit down. Now, during litanies, they stand up. That's when you can sit. Or here's something that really is difficult. You know, it sometimes would be considered sacrilege. During Badarak, the saints are commemorated. Arakelot, Serpots, Markaris, everybody sits down, including the priests. All the saints. And then the Catholicos' name is going to everybody stands up. Tiran Serpazan, actually, I learned this from him. He says, son, either you stand up for all the saints and then the Catholicos, or if you're sitting down for the saints, sit down for the Catholicos. The Catholicos is not above the saints. And he never did. Now, if you dare do that, oh boy. The point is not respect or disrespect. The point is awareness and non-awareness of what we're doing. That's the whole issue. And during Badara, during any service, awareness is very important. I have said this many times. I grew up in Jerusalem. I learned all of our liturgies in Jerusalem. And in Jerusalem, until today, you will learn what to do. You will learn how to do. You will learn when to do.
But you won't learn why.
But you will not learn why. I actually was ordained there. I served there for 5 years as a priest. Then I came here. I went to St. Vladimir's, Father Alexander Schmemann, Father John Meyendorf, Professor Veselin Kesic, listening to them. Then that's why. Everything that I had learned in Jerusalem made sense only because I understood why. That's the most important ingredient in whatever we do in the liturgy, and that's the one we're leaving out. Why do we do what we do? That's very important. So, the Jamakirk actually starts with the renunciation of the world, because don't forget, we are in this world, but not of this world. the Jamer Coutume that we're going to do, that community prayer, puts us with God. And with God with us. After Jamer Coutume, we're going to go into the world to become his presence in the world. That's what the Jamer Coutume has to do, is to create in us the awareness that we are God's presence in this world. We're his hands, we're his eyes, we're his feet, we're his legs walking around. Okay? So it starts with Rajaring, and then we have Datevatsi's creed. Excellent, excellent definition of our church's creed. Superb. One of the few. We have the Nicene Creed, we have the Apostles' Creed, we have this. We have a few other creedal statements in the Jamakirk, but this particular one is quite comprehensive. But once again, it would be important, or its importance depends on our knowledge and our understanding of what it says. Papkin Gatorigos Güleserian very seriously questions the level of awareness of what our creed says, whether our faithful who attend church very faithfully, very regularly, wonderful people, but how much awareness do they have of our creed that is going to bring to life everything that we do? If we do not know, for example, we believe in one God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of things visible and invisible. What does it mean? Each word contains centuries of theology. Theology not as a classroom subject, but theology as a way of life. So, awareness is very, very important. In our people right now, awareness of creed is very low, if at all. If at all. Unfortunately, the same can be said of clergy. They pay attention. Don't read it, it must be chanted. Why? Why? I have seen, chanters, deacons, chanting it, not knowing a word of what they're saying. They love it, though. Wait a minute. Again, I'm going to give you one example just to lighten the moment. One of our bishops one day is attending church, and there was one of the singers who was singing exactly that. Get him out. Get him out now. He stopped, got him out, says, now read the Havadunk. And the deacons read the Havadunk. Sometimes Archbishop Shinor Kalustyan used to say this. We should, to create awareness in our people as to what we're doing, we should sing what we are reading and read what we are singing. Reverse. You know how many priests will not be able to say the words of a song because the words come out with the music. That's how we have learned. the awareness, the mind, is not cooperating with the mouth to coordinate the meaning. These are very important aspects that, and then mera. Mera. Now, here it is, let me see, 1, 2, almost 3 pages. Right? First of all, this is at the beginning of the day. What do we do now? We stop the Badarak, do general confession, abbreviate it, then everybody gets up. Wait a minute, a few things. Why do we have to interrupt Badarak to accommodate people's laziness to get to church on time? That's what we're doing, you know. People are lazy to come to church on time, and instead of really teaching them to come to church on time, we're saying, come whenever you want. I'm going to change the laws and the tradition to accommodate your laziness. Well, okay. Now think about this now. This that we have in the book is an abbreviation. This is an abbreviation of a larger personal confession by St. Ephraim. You see here? Let me give you just one example. Merat char chorhertov madatzis. Nenkutiamp. Okay? Then he gives the examples of Nenkutium. Adelutiam, examples of adelutium, hatred. Chetiv, examples of chet. Machanok, hachachanok, chulutiam, borogano, all with each one, he gives 5, 6, 10 examples as to what he means. St. Ephraim, as personal, his personal confession. The point that I am trying to emphasize here is this. We are reading all this as a formula. Mm-hmm. Confession is not a formula. Confession is opening a contrite heart to God. That's what confession is. If there is no contrition, there's no confession. So, a few things already we have found to be not just deficient, contrary to what it was intended for. Papkin Gatorigos Gileserian, one of my favorite authors of the 20th century, who really spent 14 years in the United States and went back to the Middle East. He says, the sacrament of confession has been dead in the Armenian Church for centuries already. And he said this almost 90 years ago. We need to bring it back. Yes?
I've heard also people give like an opposite position, saying that there's something that could be really useful and accommodating about the way that we do confession, because as you were saying, it has to do with like contrition. So it really depends on the intention of the person doing it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it offers a lot of like freedom of conscience and decision in that. Just to give like opposing viewpoint, I'd like to see your thoughts more on that.
That's not opposing, that's agreeing with me.
How so?
What you just said agrees to what I said. We need a contrite heart.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
He's saying how earlier you mentioned it's like And the way we do Ostavanchu now is accommodating laziness.
Mhm.
But he's saying it's not, it's actually very useful and helpful.
Wait a minute though. There is a confession at the beginning of Badarak, right? You realize that?
Yeah. The one the priest
Where
does?
the priest actually confesses his sins to the people, asks the people's forgiveness, and the people forgive the priest.
Mhm.
And the priest then forgives the people.
Oh.
There is a little confession at the beginning of the Badarak as it is. That's what intended for. So if they were there, we don't need to redo this
Oh.
and interrupt the Badarak.
Hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
That's
So
what they used to do in Iran, like when Armenians first moved to Iran, like 423 years ago, when they start building their first churches, they would do the same way. My grandfather always would say, like, back, like, he heard from his grandpa that that's how he was. Like, Orthodox first would start, like, at 7 in the morning,
uh-huh.
because in Iran, Sunday is not a weekend,
Right,
and the man had to work.
right,
But they had so much faith,
right,
they had to go to Patarak on Sunday and then go to work. So they
Right.
would do at 7 o'clock,
right,
so the men could get to work.
right.
And they would do the confession at the beginning,
That's correct.
like the way you said.
Yeah, yeah. Well, also now in the Middle East, Badarak started Jama Kutim Badarak started very early, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock the latest, it's over. And that's when it starts. With us here, 10:30 is when it starts. In Jerusalem, Easter Badarak is over by 9 o'clock in the morning.
I got to experience that.
Okay, so these are, however, important. You know, part of what we're trying to accomplish here is see that the Badarak, Jamer Kutyun, everything else is subject to adjustments to the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
That's important. But the awareness of the congregation and the priests and the choir and everybody, awareness of what we're doing is fundamentally important in making it meaningful and hit the purpose that we're trying to accomplish. You're not coming to church for socialization. We're not going to church to feel Armenian. We're not going to church to hear a beautiful concert or whatever. We're going there to pray together to feel the presence of Christ amongst us. Christos image mirhait netzah. That's the important thing. That awareness. Now, again, I have said this during Badarak. The deacon takes the vokchin from the priest in a certain formula, comes down, a priest standing there or parish council members gives it vokchin to them. Put your right hand over your heart. Christos image merhait netzah. Sometimes I have heard so many wrong expressions, they don't even know what they're saying. And then that person turns to the other, that person turns to the other. I'd like to see the day when we're going to do what our ancestors did. Stop, sing Christos image merhait netzah, embrace the one near you, whoever, and say, how lucky we are, Jesus is between us. Jesus is amongst us. That's what we're saying. That's what we're doing. Why not do it? Our ancestors did not have formulas. Going to confession. The person reads this. Sometimes one person reads it, a whole group of people join at the end of each group of sins. You know what? In the 17th century, there was a book. It was called Tsub Kahanaitz. Translated, guide for priests. Literally, guiding cane for priests. In there, for confession, says to the priest, let the person read this form. One person, okay, not a group, separately. In Jerusalem, there is a confessional. Sub Magara Madurga, St. Macaриus Chapel. And there is a Hostovanahair, Father Confessor. If anybody wanted, they would go into that chapel. He would close the curtain and read the confession. Tsub Kahana, it says, after the person reads the confession, before, saying to the priest, before you give the absolution, ask the person to say what is bothering him or her. That's okay. I read the formula. I lied to my mom yesterday. I cheated someone in business yesterday. See what I'm saying? Even though generally that was mentioned, but this particular sin I am aware of is what's bothering me. That's what I am here asking forgiveness for. See how important that is? See how just, this is not now 4th century. This is 17th century. Not too far back. Quite a bit back, but not too far back. We have to recreate that. You know, our 2 children went to Catholic school. And both of them went through the process of first confession, first communion. I went to the priest and I said, Father Frank, he knew that I am a priest and so on. I said, look, in our tradition, we already have baptized the kid, and we have, in our tradition, we commune the child after baptism immediately. He says, I know that. But I wanted my children to go through that experience. He said, fine. The day came. They went, did the confession, came out. You had to see the transformation in an 8, 9-year-old child. They learned. They realized something is happening. And it happened also at St. Narcissus when we were in Stanford, in New Rochelle. Summer students used to come. We did this. It's a comfort confession. And they did, one by one. One by one. It was transformative. Some of these kids came in and left with tears flowing, but changed. They had changed their life. That confession, true confession, changed their life. That's what this is supposed to do. Okay? So we have, this is not going to happen overnight. Where we are at right now happened over centuries for many, many reasons. But we have to now consciously reinvent it, reapply it for our present lifestyle and present circumstances. Okay? Okay. Let's take our noon break and then we'll come back at
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.